Once upon a time in the world of medicine, a storm broke that would shake the very foundations of trust between doctors and their patients. Dr. George Nichopoulos found himself in the eye of this tempest, accused of crimes that would test the limits of justice and truth. It started with a simple premise. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, had died from an overdose of prescription drugs, and Dr. Nichopoulos was at the center of the controversy. But what unfolded was far from simple. It began with a television network, ABC, and a producer who would stop at nothing to get a story. They claimed to seek truth, but in reality, they were building a case against Dr. Nichopoulos using underhanded tactics. The producer admitted that investigators from the district attorney's office worked closely with ABC, sharing lists of Elvis's inner circle to interview. The medical board's help was enlisted, creating a web of collaboration between the network and government agencies. Dr. Nichopoulos and his team saw through the ruse. They knew ABC wasn't truly after truth, but rather ratings. The network's actions were a clever blend of investigative journalism and sensationalism. They used their power to get the state to join forces in what they called Operation Nick. This operation was designed to create a paper trail linking drugs to the doctor accused of killing Elvis. ABC wanted motive, opportunity, and a means, all to paint Dr. Nichopoulos as the villain. For Dr. Nichopoulos, it felt hopeless. He faced a media behemoth with deep pockets and a clear agenda. His legal team kept assuring him it would all blow over once ABC got the autopsy report they craved so badly, but the media frenzy continued. ABC's primetime show, The Elvis Cover-Up, aired, captivating 17 million households. The show fueled public outrage, pushing the narrative that Dr. Nichopoulos had recklessly overprescribed drugs, leading to Elvis's untimely death. The fallout was immediate and severe. Hate mail and death threats flooded Dr. Nichopoulos's family and office. His home and office addresses were published in newspapers, putting his loved ones in danger. The Memphis Police Department stepped in, providing intermittent security to protect them. Despite the chaos, Dr. Nichopoulos tried to focus on his patients and family, not wanting others to suffer from the emotional turmoil he faced. But the media's influence was unstoppable. The Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners ruled that Dr. Nichopoulos's hearing would be open to the public, thanks to the state's Sunshine Law. This meant that anyone could watch as his case unfolded, and patients who might testify against him could do so on live television. The pressure was intense. A 7-page complaint initially charged him with overprescribing to Elvis and others, but after pressure from ABC, the complaint grew to include 20 people and spanned almost 2 years. The complexity of the case only deepened. An amended complaint emerged, claiming irregularities in pharmacy records over a longer period. This expansion was driven by ABC's influence, ensuring the state had enough evidence to build a formidable case. The stakes were high, and Dr. Nichopoulos knew he was not just fighting for his reputation, but for the trust in the medical profession itself. As the hearing approached, the media coverage only intensified. Reporters from across the nation descended on Memphis, turning the world's most famous medical board hearing into a spectacle. Dr. Nichopoulos stood at the center, ready to defend himself against charges that seemed to shift and grow with each passing day. The battle for truth had begun, and the outcome would determine not only his future, but the future of patient-doctor relationships everywhere. Dr. Nichopoulos faced a tough situation after being charged with overprescribing various medications to Elvis Presley. The charges were puzzling, especially since the medications were legitimate and meant for specific reasons. Dr. Nichopoulos explained to his lawyer that Elvis needed these drugs for things like sleeping and controlling his appetite, not for recreational use. But the real question was how the state would determine if the amounts given were truly needed. After all, they hadn't looked at Elvis's medical records. Dr. Nichopoulos and his team knew the key to defending themselves was to get Elvis's medical records into court. This would show exactly why each prescription was necessary. The lawyer pointed out that just looking at the sheer number of prescriptions without knowing Elvis's health history didn't tell the whole story. Dr. Nichopoulos had always taken the time to understand each patient's full medical background before prescribing anything. Meanwhile, ABC, a big TV network, was also trying to get their hands on the autopsy report of Elvis. They believed this report could help them in a TV show they were making about Elvis's death. However, the autopsy was done privately, and the family had ordered it, not the state. This made it hard for ABC to get access to the report legally. Dr. Nichopoulos hoped that if the court ruled Elvis's death as a homicide, the autopsy would have to be released, but this would actually hurt his case for justice. To prepare for court, Dr. Nichopoulos filed a formal answer denying the charges. He emphasized that unlike other doctors who had been found guilty of overprescribing without examining their patients, he always examined Elvis before prescribing any medicine. He took a thorough medical history and only prescribed one thing at a time. Dr. Nichopoulos also pointed out that he never charged patients for refills unless additional medical services were provided. The defense argued that the charges against Dr. Nichopoulos were unfair and based on a TV program that had a hidden agenda. They noted that the state was holding Dr. Nichopoulos to ever-changing standards, which made it hard for any doctor to keep up. Dr. Nichopoulos had even gone out of his way to help patients overcome drug addiction, which was a positive outcome of his treatments. A particularly sensitive part of the defense was about prescribing drugs to his own family, including his daughter Chrissy. At the time, there were no rules saying doctors couldn't treat their own family members. Dr. Nichopoulos had written prescriptions for himself and Chrissy only after establishing legitimate medical reasons, and these prescriptions were later dropped as they no longer needed the medications. To paint a clearer picture of his treatment of Elvis, Dr. Nichopoulos explained Elvis's struggles with insomnia and weight gain. Elvis avoided drugs like alcohol, caffeine, and nicotine, but needed help with sleep and appetite. Dr. Nichopoulos focused on these specific needs, rather than providing a broad solution. Throughout this legal battle, Dr. Nichopoulos remained firm in his belief that his actions were in Elvis's best interest. He stressed that while the state only cared about whether Tennessee's laws were broken, he had always acted with Elvis's health in mind. His goal was to show that his prescriptions were necessary and appropriate, and that he had gone above and beyond to help one of music's greatest stars. Dr. Nichopoulos faced a big challenge when he became Elvis Presley's doctor. He wanted to make sure Elvis stayed healthy and could keep performing for his fans. However, things got complicated. Some of the drugs given to Elvis were not actually for him. People would take them or even steal them. This was a big problem. To fix this, Dr. Nichopoulos came up with an envelope system. This system helped figure out who took the meds improperly. Dr. Nichopoulos felt confident that the truth would come out in the medical board hearing. He hoped the board would see his side and understand why he wrote so many prescriptions. He wanted them to see that the death of Elvis was not his fault. He was worried about how the media would handle the story, though. Some media he trusted would be fair, but others might just want a quick story. The medical board in Tennessee is like a group of doctors who review and make decisions about other doctors. They looked at Dr. Nichopoulos' actions like they were in a trial, but not in a regular court. There was a hearing officer instead of a judge. Dr. Nichopoulos knew the board members were all doctors who would try to be fair. While waiting for the hearing, Dr. Nichopoulos got support from unexpected places. A doctor friend, Dr. Varna Love, asked other doctors in Memphis to write letters supporting him. She also asked for donations. This made Dr. Nichopoulos feel better. His pastor, Father Nicholas Viron, also played a big role. Father Viron talked to Elvis and encouraged Dr. Nichopoulos and his family. He prayed with Dr. Nichopoulos, asking for strength and wisdom. The day of the hearing arrived, and it was big news. People called it the world's most famous medical board hearing. Only a few people came to the city council chambers where it happened. The hearing was long from morning till late afternoon, with only short breaks. Dr. Nichopoulos felt scared, just like Elvis would have felt. In the room, Dr. Nichopoulos and others sat behind a rail, away from the loud media and cameras outside. The media were very noisy and bright, making it hard to focus. Security was tight because of threats against the board members and Dr. Nichopoulos himself. The hearing started late because the media had to move their equipment. An attorney objected to how the media were blocking the view. Dr. Nichopoulos hoped the media wouldn't scare his patients away. Throughout this ordeal, Dr. Nichopoulos tried to stay focused on what was important, taking care of his patients and Elvis, and understanding that sometimes hard things happen even when you try your best. He hoped the medical board would see that he acted with good intentions, just like Elvis would have hoped.